And welcome back. Ed Crane here on thelibertyplaybook.com. Patrick is on assignment. And we are just a few weeks now away from the election. And this is the time of the year, the time every 4 years, when people really start paying as much attention as they will to what's going on in the government. And it hasn't been lost on a lot of people that we have a big national debt. It's almost $20 trillion. It's crazy. And what do we do about it? How do we stop it from escalating? How do we pay it down? To talk about that, I have Lou Uhler, the founder of the National Tax Limitation Committee, and Kirk Uhler, who is a supervisor in Northern California. And they have been working together on the balanced Budget Task Force, right?
Yes.
Article 5 of the Constitution, very wisely inserted by the founders, gives the people at the state level an opportunity to tell Congress, hey, this is not working, we want it changed. You have to have a convention of the states. Amazingly, it's never happened in all this time, more than 200 years. They've come close a couple of times, but they haven't. Speaking of close, you are getting close. You need 2/3 of the states to ratify this. That is, what, 34 states?
Well, two-thirds to call for the convention.
Right.
Yeah, so two-thirds to
And
go.
three-quarters to ratify.
Three-quarters to ratify. But yeah, you're right. We are at 28. We had been previously as high as 32 a number of years ago, and then unfortunately had some states rescind, but began in earnest in 2010. With the Balanced Budget Amendment Task Force, some good folks around the country working on this, most of them on their own dime, to get the additional states that we need to get us to 34 current, active, valid calls for a convention for the single purpose, as you identified, for the single purpose of a balanced budget spending limitation amendment to the United States Constitution.
Now, unless you're a politician, no offense intended, you might say to yourself, this is the mom and apple pie task force, because, you know, who wants debt, right?
Well, I'll tell you, the resumption of the incentive to do this really was driven by the election of Barack Obama. He alone has doubled the national debt during his 8 years in office. He has given away the store that has created this kind of annual deficit and debt. And so now people around the country are recognizing that this is the only way we're going to get from where we are to where we need to be. And we're just 6 states away. We're working currently in 11 states, some in the middle part of the country, some in the eastern coast. And we are very close to achieving that goal. And we feel that by this time next year, 230 years after the Philadelphia Convention, that Congress will become obliged under the Constitution to call this convention. And we've been working with experts on the economy, on constitutional rules, to devise the proper amendment. Now, interestingly, we call this the Reagan Project because Ronald Reagan was totally committed to it. We got an amendment through the Senate in 1982 that he endorsed. We'll be using that amendment as the kind of the platform from which we devise and reform and revise that amendment. But it is the Reagan Project, and it resonates across this nation.
I always look for an analogy when I try and explain to people what amending the Constitution is like. It's a little bit like the designated hitter in baseball. It's like, how can you do this? You can't mess with tradition. They've only amended it 27 times, and 10 of those with the Bill of Rights. So really, essentially 17 times once you got out of the gate. It's hard to do, number one. People, even conservatives, who would be the first people who want a balanced budget, they're a little bit afraid because there's some thinking that if we have this convention of states, you know, they'll put a global warming issue on or some other amendment that they don't want. But you guys, with one amendment, how can you have a runaway convention? There's nothing else on the agenda and can't be, right?
Well, and many of the states that have current calls for a single-purpose convention for the purpose of the Balanced Budget Amendment, many of them have penalties for their delegates built right in. Should the delegates go off script and try to take up other, some of them include prison time. for delegates that would go and try to introduce other amendments. So not only do you have all of the assurances that the people who will be appointed as delegates by these states are going to be there for that sole purpose, but then of course you have the ultimate backstop, and that is the ratification by 38 states of whatever comes out of the whatever comes out of this process.
In addition to that, this has become so real that legislators have been getting together over the last 2 years, 3 different times, and they've written the rules by which the convention will be run, 1 vote per state like the original get-together. And so it's all laid out. It's ready to go.
You're like a guy who's got restaurant reservations and a bucket of champagne. All he needs is a girl. We're going to talk some more about this because it's very interesting. You're going to hear a lot about Convention of the States, Article 5. There are really 3 different pathways to this same goal. We're going to break them down for you when we come back.